What's going on, fine people of YouTube? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be building out a pretty simple but pretty cool Airbnb listing type application in SwiftUI. This was prompted by me coming across a cool API that we could use / an upcoming premium series that I'm working on as well. Before we dig into things, destroy that like button down below. If not for the video, then for almost getting to 100,000 subscribers, and let's jump right in. So we're going to open up Xcode 15. I've got the obvious release candidate here. We're going to stick with the app template, and we'll call this let's call this Airbnb. We'll be super creative today. You want to make sure you stick with SwiftUI and of course Swift as the language, since that's the only option. So let me just go ahead and expand our window here, and I'll decrease the size of this canvas, which is always unnecessarily large. And let's jump in. So the first thing that I'll talk about is the API that we're going to use. I'm going to link this down below because it is pretty nifty, and I do plan on using this in the upcoming series I mentioned. But it is provided by Open Data Soft, which basically scrapes data across the internet, and there's a variety of data sets available that include a variety of properties from the source where it's scraped, and there's a set for Airbnb listings. On the left here, you can actually filter by a bunch of criteria. I've already set this up to filter essentially a data set of listings in New York, and I opened up one of those listings here that we'll use to create our models for this API's response. So if we come back into our project, what we're going to do are a couple setup items. We're going to create some folders to start grouping everything together because it is important. So let's see if I can get Xcode to cooperate. There we go. We're going to have a views folder. We'll have models. We'll have view models. And maybe we'll also have a services in here. So inside of services, I'm going to create a single service. We'll call this API service. And surprise, surprise, it's going to interact with our API that I just showed in the browser over there. And let's just create this guy. Alrighty. We're not going to stick too much in here quite yet, except for the URL that I will be copying from this website. So if you actually come to the section where we have all these filter items, I'm going to update this to be 100 results, and then we'll hit submit here. And what I'll do is I'll click on this URL, which will open up the fully qualified URL in another tab, and we're just going to paste this in here. This is the API URL that we will be hitting to retrieve the data. I'm going to create a constant struct here and just drop it in like so. And let me actually do it this way. Let's do API URL, and we'll use the proper type here and stick it in as a string. Now, what is our UI going to look like? We did create these folders. Let's stick our content view into the views folder, and let's chat about this for a moment. So the Airbnb app has a pretty nifty UI, and it gets pretty complex. We're going to try to keep it simple, but still pretty elegant today. So we'll have a list of cards, if you will, that shows a picture, maybe a title, maybe the host name, some info about, a particular Airbnb. And then when you tap on it, the idea is we'll open up a detail view that shows more information about it. And we won't go too crazy about the details since the models here to provide an insane amount of information, and that would just take way too long for one video. So let's get into things. Let's create in this content view, we're going to create a single view, and this view will be our Airbnb listings view. And obviously we don't have this guy yet, so we'll need to create some more files in here. We'll create a Swift file, and we'll basically toss in that name. We'll create the SwiftUI view after we, of course, import SwiftUI. And we'll want a body in here, which for now, I'll just stick a text in here saying hello. Maybe hello with the exclamation mark, a little more exciting. And let's see what else we're going to need. So in the spirit of SwiftUI, we want everything to be a composable view and keep everything nice and separate. So we have this one primary view we created as our listings view, and our listings view will basically show a list of a single Airbnb card, if you will. That's all I'll choose to call it. So we'll create here a SwiftUI file. or a SwiftUI view, I should say, and I'll call this an Airbnb listing card. And maybe we'll call this listing card view just to be a little more specific. And it looks like it actually, I think I used the wrong template when I created this file, so we'll have to create this manually, which is okay. Don't forget, you do need to import SwiftUI. And I realize I'm going through this kind of quickly. This video is a little impromptu, and you know, my hope is that folks have a primer with SwiftUI here. Alrighty, and if not, I've got a video and series on it as well. So here is our listing card view, and then we're gonna want a detail view as well. So let me see if I can find the template for a SwiftUI view. There it is. I don't think I used the right one before. Let's call this a Airbnb detail view. And as the name implies, this guy will show details about the listing once we pass it on in. Alrighty, so we got our views in place. Let's start creating some of these models. So when we call this API, we're gonna get this big response. So we're gonna want one model to represent that response, and then we get a collection of results. So we essentially want a model for that too, so we can use them and iterate over them. So let's create two models respectively. So we'll call this Airbnb listings response. And we'll do one more in here, and this one will be a Airbnb listing. And let's make sure we spell everything correctly. Alrighty, so these are good to go. We are going to obviously want to stick something in here that is codable, so we can decode the data we get as a result of the network call we're going to make. So we'll create another model in here, which matches the file name. This should be codable, not coding key. Let me make sure the other one is correct. Yep, this is codable. And if we come back to the response, if you take a look, we have something called total count, which is presumably the total count of results on hand. This is not, you know, the total count of results we got back. This is just the entire total data set, 10,934 results. And in our case, the URL we copied is limited to 100 results. So let's create basically a model that matches this schema. So let's come back here, make sure we're in the right one. We're gonna have total count, which is an integer, and then we'll have results, which is plural, I believe. And this is going to be a Airbnb listing, like so. Let's come back into our Airbnb listing model, and let's start grabbing stuff from in here. So what I like to do, what I think is the most efficient way to go about doing this, maybe a little hacky, is I like to copy and paste this whole thing into my file, and then I will just comment it out like so. And this way it makes it easier for me to figure out what properties I want and what properties I don't want on my model. So that being said, let's do it like this. So we have an ID, I'll take that. We have a listing URL, fine, I'll take that. And let's see what else we want. We don't really want scrape ID. We don't really want to know when it's last scraped. We do want the name, that's pretty important. We perhaps also want the summary. Alrighty, let's see, space here looks like is a nice description, if you will, which is similar to summary, but I will grab that as well. Let's continue onwards. We actually have an actual thing called description. So I'll grab that as well. We'll see if these match or what the difference is once we start building out the UI. Experiences offered, don't really care. Notes, don't care. I'm gonna ignore all of these. House rules are kind of important, so let me grab this as well. And you might notice I'm just copying the keys directly, and these are all snake case with these underscores. I'm not gonna bother with, you know, doing camel case, but if you wanted to, you could. There is a decoding strategy where Swift can match your camel case from the input of this snake case format. Just wanted to call that out for those who are wondering. Thumbnail URL. This is important. We want to show this, but maybe we'll take, yeah, let's use a thumbnail URL instead of medium. Perhaps it'll load faster. I maybe will also grab this medium one in case the thumbnail kind of looks ugly later on. We have this big picture URL thing, and let's see, and then we have this extra large picture URL. So I'm gonna use the extra large picture URL since I think that'll look a little better once we open up the detail view. And let's see, so we have a host name. This is important, so we have host details. And who knows, maybe this video gets a little long and I'll split it into multiple, but let's see where this goes. We have a host since, which is in a not so nice formatted style. We'll want to format this later on. And let's see, we care about that. Location is a little irrelevant. I'm gonna remove all of this. We have all the response rate. We do have a host thumbnail URL, so this might be kind of important to show this person's face, since I don't know about you, but it might be nice to know who I'm staying with. And then we also have the large URL. And let's see what else we want to grab. I am going to ignore all of this since it's getting a little long. I guess neighborhood would be nice to know as well. So let me stick neighborhood in here as well. And if I haven't called it out, or if you haven't noticed, these results are from New York City, since it is, a pretty popular destination, and I do happen to also be on the East Coast here. Market, a little irrelevant. I'm gonna ignore probably the rest of this stuff, except for a few more. So perhaps I want amenities, which looks to be an array of strings of what amenities this place offers. And the price. The price is obviously very important since this is how we're gonna let our user know what on earth they're gonna pay to stay at this person's house/apartment. So let's see. We've got a bunch of other fields in here, obviously. I am going to just ignore the rest of these for the sake of brevity and time, since we already have a bunch of things in here. And let's make sure we're building. If we hit Command B, make sure it compiles, make sure we don't have any weird typos. And let's see what else we want to do. So we have our models in shape. Let's see if we can get some data and actually, get these models decoded from the response. So we have this API service thing here with the URL in here. So what I'll do here is I will say public func get listings, and this listings will give us a completion handler. And I'm intentionally not using async await for the sake of simplicity. But here in the response, we are going to get a result where the success case will be a collection of Airbnb listing objects. Otherwise, we'll have an error, and this whole thing will return void. The closure itself, make sure you do annotate it as escaping here. Let's create a task, which will be a URL session shared, and we're going to do a data task with a URL and completion handler. So let's see if I can find it. So here we have a URL, so we'll do data task URL. Let's see if I can find it here. So it's using a URL request, which is okay. We can create the request right above. In the response here, we'll get data, we'll ignore the response, and we'll use the error. Let's create this request up above. The first thing we'll do is we will unwrap the API URL from the constants. We are unwrapping it since the initializer of a URL is indeed failable or nullable. We'll create the request here, which is a URL request, passing in that URL aforementioned. And inside of here, we'll want to handle the response, but don't forget to do task.resume at the bottom to kick it off. Here we'll say guard let data, and that error is indeed nil, aka nothing has gone wrong. Otherwise, what we'll do in here is two things. We're going to say, well, I guess one thing. We'll say something failed, pass back the error. Otherwise, pass back something else, which will be URL error, and I'm going to use the bad request. I believe there's another error on here along the lines of something such as bad request. Let's just do bad URL since I can't seem to find it at the moment. All right, so we got the data back here. Now what we want to do is we want to decode this to the appropriate model, which is a response object. So here we'll say that the response is going to be JSON decoder. And we're going to say, hey, decode an instance of Airbnb listings response.self from this data. And this call can actually throw an error. So we want to prefix it with the try, and that's why we wrap it in a do catch block. And once we're able to do that, we can say completion success, and we're going to respond with response.results. So let's see what on earth is happening here. So Airbnb, this model should have results off of it, but it looks like something is yelling at me. I'll take a look in a moment, but let me just type it in manually. And in this case, we're going to respond with a failure and the error that we caught. So let's see what gives here. So it's saying type of expression is ambiguous with type of annotation. So data task with a request. Let's see why that is. Let me see if I can use a URL directly. Interesting. So something seems to be wrong here because I have used this API a million times. So we're going to debug this together. This is my favorite part. Whenever I screw up, we screw up together. So let's see what the heck is happening. So let me cut all that out. And it looks like the error went away. And if I paste it back in, we get the error that comes back. So let's see if I screwed something up here. We'll say data equals data. Let me comment out this decoding logic, and let's see if there's a problem. It looks like there is a problem. It looks like from this guard let statement. So let's see what is going on. So I am going to comment this out. We're able to compile. And the type of data is data. So let's see if I can type this out again, and let's see what got screwed up. All right, we're gonna unwrap data. Looks like we're still compiling. We'll verify that. Let me actually put this back in. All right, so something in here is screwed up. So let's see what that is. It looks like it's this line right here and kind of just process of elimination. So what I'll do here is I will say if let error, then we're going to say completion, and we'll say failure with that error, and we're no longer seeing that error for whatever reason. Bear with me here. All right, so we uncommented it. Sometimes Xcode errors are just like super unhelpful, so you kind of have to, you know, struggle with it a little bit, but I digress. So here we are successfully passing back the results from the response if we are able to decode it. Otherwise, we'll come into here. I like to stick some breakpoints in here for the first time when we're going to actually use this to make sure our API call is succeeding. All right, good deal. So now that we've got this API service thing set up here, we want a place where we can actually call this, and that place is going to be inside of a view model. So this view model is going to reside inside of the Airbnb listings view, and it's going to be a state object. And the reason it's going to be a state object is because we want to retain state on it for our SwiftUI view updates via published properties and various other ways that we're going to use to update our view. So in our view models folder, let's create a class with the same name that we used over there. So the view name suffixed view model, and this will be a observable object like so. Make sure you're able to compile. It looks like something is yelling at me. So it says it can't find the view model in scope. Let's make sure it is spelled correctly. All right, it looks like it is spelled correctly. So let's see what the problem is. So it looks like it's giving me various problems. Let me make sure I did this correctly. All right, so this is an observable object. Let me actually do observable. I believe observable object is correct here. Clearly I have not used SwiftUI in quite a bit. So we're gonna struggle through this together. So let's come back here. This is a state object. I know Apple has recently changed this, so we're gonna see what on earth is going wrong together. So it's saying generic observable objects require that Airbnb view model conforms to observable object, which makes sense. That is what I had here before. Observable object, and we're still getting errors. It's saying generic struct. This error should have gone away at this point. Alrighty, view model, Airbnb listing, view model. Let me do a Command Shift K, which will clean the project, and then I will build again. And let's see what the problem here is. So it's saying target Airbnb project has Swift task blocking downstream targets. I'm not entirely sure what it's yelling about. It's because okay, this is a stupid error, but we're gonna debug it together. This file name conflicts with the file name we previously used. So be careful when you copy and paste, as you just saw myself make the same mistake. All right, maybe I'll cut that out. I'll probably just leave it in. So if other people hit the issue, you realize the uh-oh you made like I did. So, okay, we're gonna go back to state object here, which is what I wanted. We're gonna go back into the view model. It's an observable object. It needs to be a class. We'll actually also mark it final. And inside of here, let's start doing some cool stuff. What we'll do is we'll create an instance of our API service, which will be API service. And what we'll do inside of here is we will say, well, let's think about it. So what we can do is we can create a published collection here of listings, and this will be a collection of Airbnb listing models. By default, it'll be empty, and we'll have a function which is fetch listings. And fetch listings will say service, and we have one function on here which gives us a result object back. We will switch on this object, and in the success case, we can say self.listings is models, and in this case, we'll just break. We don't want to cause a retain cycle, so we'll make sure we capture self in a weak capacity like so, and we'll just ignore that error for the time being. And let's jump back into our listings view. And what we'll do inside of here is we are going to want a list, or we're going to want a, we can do a grid perhaps as well, but for now we're going to want a list. So let me create a navigation view, and inside of here I'll just stick a loading. And what I will also do is I will say on appear. Once this guy has appeared, we'll say view models, and we're going to call this fetch listings function. Alrighty, it's building, taking its time, and let's give this a run in a simulator, and let's see what happens. Alrighty, let's see if we hit our breakpoint. We should hit the breakpoint in the API service once our simulator launches and gets our app running. Sometimes the simulator is just slow. Okay, so it looks like it went into the failure. And what I suspect is if we look at this error here, it's saying that, let's see what the error is, Swift error. I am going to PO the error, which is what we can use to inspect exactly what has gone wrong. It looks like what it's saying is the coding key for results int value is nil. Okay, index 1. So what I'll do instead is, instead of having to one by one try to figure out what key is misbehaving, what I'll do here is I will say let JSON equals try JSON serialization, JSON object with data. And what I'll do is I will do a print string describing JSON. And what this will end up doing is it'll spit out into the console what the schema is that we're getting back, the exact thing actually. And that's pretty helpful to figure out like what is going wrong. So it looks like we are getting the data successfully, but something is a little fishy here. So results, it does look like is a collection, but I don't actually see. So let's see what's happening. So let's go back into this response. We don't really care for total count, so let me get rid of this. And what I suspect is that some of these properties are probably nullable, which is why it is complaining. So what I'm going to do is stick a question mark at the end of a bunch of these. And we are going to build and run this again, and we're going to see if it is happy this time. It looks like this time it did successfully go into the success case. So what I'll do now is I will iteratively add stuff back and see, what I can get away with making non-null versus null. So it's still succeeding. So total count is good to go. Let me remove nullability from some of these, like price and amenities and these 4 down here. And let's see what happens. You can kind of see that there's this process of, so we didn't hit the breakpoint, which means one of these was the culprit. So let's add 2 of those back. But what you can kind of see is this process where we go and kind of guess our way through stuff sometimes, because it ends up being just more efficient than just like reading every single error. I find, at least. Let's add all 3 of these back, and if it's still not hitting the breakpoint, that means the price is the problem. So it looks like the price indeed is the problem. Let me get rid of these, and let's see if it's only the price or the other parts of issues too. So it looks like these all do need to be nullable. Let's make sure we hit the breakpoint. All right, we hit the breakpoint, cool. So we're able to get the data back. So what I'll PO is results. Or actually response, I should say. I'll PO response.results.first.name. And we should get the name of the first listing back, which is large patio, 2-bedroom, LES style. Okay, cool. So we got some results. Pretty good shape. So now what we can do is actually start working on some of our UI. So back in our Airbnb listings view, what I can do inside of here now is I can create a list, and this list will be over view models.listings, and I can say for a listing in, for now, let's just create a text, and this will be listing.name. And we might get yelled at for 2 reasons. One, that name is optional, which I guess makes sense. So in this case, we'll coalesce it to an empty string. But more importantly, the listing type is of a model that is not hashable / identifiable. So I'll make this hashable here, and as well as identifiable. And we already have the ID property in here. Let's see if I can get rid of this and if the decoding still works from the response. All right, it works because we got a list, and we should be able to now start crafting a nice UI, which will essentially show, I guess, the name here, some information below it, and a nice image on the left-hand side. We don't want to have to do that in the listing view directly here. We created a specific view that should be capable of doing this, which is this card view. And what I'll do is we'll create this card with a model. And it dawns on me that we should probably have a specific view model for this type, but I am just going to shorthand this again for the sake of time. And in the longer series, we can go into the details of how to make this actually look cool. So, okay, let's create a HStack in here since we're going to want a horizontal setup. We'll have a async image, and this URL is going to essentially be a URL. And this is going to be from the model. Let's see, there is a URL for the particular place, which I believe was a thumbnail URL. And this is not nullable if I'm not mistaken. And let's see, it looks like optional string. Okay, it is nullable, so we do need to coalesce it to an empty string, which is okay. There is our HStack, and then what we'll do is on the right of it, we'll have a text label, which will be our model.name, and we'll just call this, in the coalesce case, listing. We'll say the font of this will be title, and maybe we'll even bold it. And let's see what else we want to do. So instead of this being a text in here, what I can add is a navigation link. And the link here should have a destination as well as the particular value that we want to show. So let's see if I can find the appropriate one. Let's say the destination is just some view for now. We'll just call it a text of hello. And the label here will be a Airbnb listing card view, which is what we were just working in. And we're going to pass in the listing as the model. And let's see why this is yelling at me. So it's saying generic could not be inferred because it's supposed to be a label directly. Let's see if it lets me do this. Okay, looks like it does. And let's give this a run and let's see what decides to show up on our screen. Okay, cool. We're in kind of good shape. We can even click on it and it opens up this text, which should really be our detail view. We even see the picture here, which is kind of awesome. But there's a couple problems. A couple of them we'll ignore, like the fact that after we scroll away, things disappear. But the bigger issue that I'm seeing at the moment is the fact that the sizing is all screwed up. We don't want the sizing to be so screwed up because it doesn't look consistent and kind of looks ugly, frankly. So we're going to do a couple things for the async image here. We're going to set its scale. So we're going to say scale to fit. And we're also going to first make this resizable. Is resizable not available on here? It looks like it is not. So let's see if I can use the frame with a width of 100 and a height of 100. And let's see what this ends up looking like. Okay, looking pretty good. It looks like the image is overflowing the bounds of the 100 that we set. The text is consistent in how it looks. We do want to decrease this a little bit. We should have a title 3 option perhaps. And right below this, what I am going to do is stick in a description, which will be body for the font. And there should be a max number of lines here. And let's see what that is called. So line limit is what I'm looking for. And we'll maybe limit it to 3. And we will also set a foreground color on this to maybe light gray. Let's see if I can move this up here. Alrighty, so it looks like it's not foreground color. So it's saying, okay, the light gray isn't on color. So what we'll want to do is create a color with a UI color. So what I'll do in here is I'll say secondary label, which will be light mode and dark mode compliant. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. These are next to each other, which is not what I want. I want them to be vertically aligned. So the description is below the title here. I'll also do a line limit here of maybe something along the lines of maybe 1. We'll see what that looks like. And let's see, we want this to fit. So we should have scale to fit, which is fine, but let me move this below the frame since it makes more sense that we set the frame, bounds, and then the scale to fit. But it looks like it still overflows. So let's see if there's another modifier that is more appropriate on here that I could use. So let's see if we can do aspect ratio, and I want this to fit. We might want it to fill to look a little nicer, but let's see if it even decides to cooperate. Looks like it's not even cooperating. So let me see what a fill looks like. And we'll probably want something like clips to bound on here, if I'm not mistaken. So we want this to be clipped. Let me actually move this here, get rid of that. So we want this to fill. We're going to set a frame on it, and we're going to clip it. Okay, so it looks like we're in better shape. At least things are consistent. Obviously, the image is not, showing its entire shape, but at least things are not overlapping and things look a little better. So we can, of course, click on these, and this will open up the detail view. We just need to pretty up the detail view, and that'll basically be this brief putting together of an Airbnb listing app. So let me go back to the listings view here, and I want to do one more thing. I do want to set a navigation title on here. So we do have the title up top. I'm going to call it Airbnb. Make sure this guy does show up. I think it looks a little nicer. Okay. And the other thing I will do here is I will say, in the case of, let's do it like this. So we'll have this here regardless. And let's see if I can stick this inside of a VStack. And what I'll do is I'll say if viewModel.listings is empty, we probably want to show a progress view, and then we'll have a progress view style. And there's something along the lines of a circular progress view style. And this essentially is just a spinner that shows up. It's actually in the middle right there for those of you that caught it for that brief moment. And we should still be able to scroll down, and we have our nice navigation title up here now in the bar, which is what I was going for. And let's update this to finally be able to go to the detail view. So instead of going to the text here, we are going to be going to the Airbnb listing, detail view. Let's do Airbnb detail view. Make sure this compiles. And once more, we're going to pass in the model directly into this guy, and Command-Shift-O to navigate around your project. And inside of here, I'm going to get rid of the preview, and our model will be Airbnb listing, very similar to what we did in the card view. And here we can build out what this view looks like. So I am going to create a scroll view that is vertical. And the way we're going to lay this out is going to be, the big picture at the top. So we'll do a picture here and maybe some info. And then maybe we'll do some like host info at the bottom. And like you guys saw, the model gives you a bunch of stuff. So you can actually get pretty wild and make this look really nice as well. So let's jump into it. So we're going to do an async image. The URL here is going to be from the string, which is model.extra-large picture URL. It's nullable, so make sure you coalesce it like so. You can go ahead and do an aspect ratio, and what I'll do is perhaps fill. And we will also do clipped. So we'll see how large and monstrosity this is over here. And let's see what else we want to do. So now we're gonna want some information down here. So let's just start to stick some of it in. I'm just gonna put it into a bunch of labels. And as we run this, we can probably see what it ends up looking like. So we'll have name, and description and summary, and I could have sworn there was some other stuff on here too. I guess house rules are kind of important. Neighborhood space. So we'll do house rules, we'll do space, and maybe we will prefix this with whatever we are showing. So it looks like it's not going to let me do that. It's going to be upset because I'm trying to coalesce it. So what I'll do here is the following. So I will interpolate the string like so instead of trying to append with a plus sign. So here I will say these are, whoops, that's not what I want. These are going to be house rules. And you kind of got to play with this stuff a little bit, mainly because the formatting of the scraped data sometimes is not in the nicest shape, but that's part of the fun of building this stuff. So we're going to say description here. And I guess we don't need to prefix the name, but we probably do want to bold it since it's slightly important. Okay, and then down below, for the host, what I'm going to do is create an HStack. We're going to want the image on the left-hand side. So we'll say this async image. We'll take a URL with a string. And this will be our host picture URL. Coalesce to empty. Actually, I don't think it's actually nullable because we never made this property nullable. So we can actually ignore the fact that we had to do the coalescing up here. What I do want to do on this guy though is set a frame with a width and a height. So I will go and do maybe 75. And I want to clip this to a shape. And I'll actually clip it to a circle, perhaps. And I'll also come up here and say that the aspect ratio on this will be to fill. And right next to this image, we're gonna stick the host name. So here we can say model.host name, like so. And we'll also bold this guy. Let's give this a run since we put a bunch of stuff here, and let's see what on earth we're working with. So let's click on this first one. Okay, we have this monstrosity of a image up here. We have everything, it looks like center aligned, at least this is center aligned. And it does look like that the image for the host number one is not showing up, and the fact that the width of everything is wider than the available allotted space, and presumably that is because our image is greatly destroying the layout here. So let's take care of all this. So what I will do is I'm gonna nest this entire scroll view inside of a VStack. This VStack will have an alignment of leading. The next thing that I will do is nest this scroll view inside of a geometry reader. And by doing this, I get a proxy, which we'll use momentarily. Bear with me since I haven't done this in a while, but let's make sure we can still scroll. All right, we can still scroll, but now what this will let me do is this will let me set a restricted size on this scroll view here. So I should be able to say, let's see what's going on here. Okay, so here we have the geometry reader. Let me just line break that. And here we're gonna have a max width, and this max width is going to be proxy. And I want the frame in the local scope, and I want the width off of that. Local or global should both be fine, but we're essentially restricting the maximum space that can be used here so things are not overflowing. It looks like it's not cooperating. So let's see what's going on here. Let me also restrict this here. So here I'll say frame. And we'll say the width is going to be proxy.frame in global, and we'll do width here. So this should not be wider than the global coordinate space's frame. And okay, so now we're not actually overflowing. So we'll see on the left-hand side that all of our text looks to be appropriate, albeit we probably want a little bit of padding. So let's add some padding to all of these. I'm just gonna stick on some padding here. And we're not gonna get too crazy with the beautification of this view, but we do want some level of, niceness here. So, okay, so we have our title here, it's center. We have our description, we've got our house rules, we've got all this information showing up. It looks like the async image for the URL for the host is, not deciding to show up. Let's get rid of our modifiers on here, and let's see if they're, something weird going on, or if the URL is just a bad URL. I suspect it's just a bad URL. Yep, it's just a bad URL, so that's okay. And let's see what else we want to do. So this image up here is still slightly large and obnoxious. So what I will perhaps do is use the width as the maximum height as well. So here I'll say this is the same as the width, and this will at least restrict it to be a square. And instead of fill, I will perhaps make this a fit. And let's see what this looks like inside this frame. All right, so it looks like that actually did not help the cooperation department. So let's move this back up. Async images always get me because I always look for resizable, but it looks like we're in better shape though. We have some padding, we have our name up top. Let's add some more information about the host, and then we can wrap it up there. So here we can add a text, and this is going to be about your host. We'll make this bold, and we will also give this a title 1 or 2. Let's go with 1, and let's see how that looks. And I will put some more information here. Add some padding on that H stack, and here we will have host dot, or model dot, I should say. And then we have quite a few host information pieces here that we have stuck. So it looks like we do have a thumbnail URL and a picture URL. And we do have host since, so we can actually use this here. And we can say hosting since, and that looks like it's good to go. And one thing I did remember that we forgot to add is the price here. It is a little important, but it looks like we did have a thumbnail URL for the host. So let me see if that thumbnail one actually ends up showing up. Let's make this one title 2, because presumably title 1 does not even exist. So let's scroll down here, and still not seeing any picture for Trey and Sean, which is okay, but it's showing hosting since March 22nd, 2011, which is pretty cool. It's a long time to be an Airbnb host. Let's bring in the pricing info, and then we'll wrap this up. So pricing, I guess, might be helpful to be at the top. So what I'll do here is I will say nightly rate, and I probably want to unwrap this. I'm going to say if let price is model.price. We can actually come in here and say nightly price. And inside of this, we probably want to use a view model to format the price, since the price is just an integer. But what I'll do for now, for the sake of simplicity, is I'll stick a formatter in here. Well, actually, instead of even a formatter, what I'll do is I'll say price dot formatted, and I will use the currency formatter for USD. Just assuming we're in New York and everything is going to be in US dollars. And let's scroll down and let's pick a different listing, since we do have 100 options here. It looks like some of these images are slow. Async image is questionable at best, but let's go into this one here. It looks like things are a little slow, but we do have a nightly rate. So this is $275 a night, which is pretty expected in New York, I would say. And I think we're in pretty good shape. Oh, we even have an image for Pablo down here, which is pretty cool. Okay, it looks like our image is not clipping to the circle that we specified, but it looks like we do at least have an image, which is pretty nice to see. It would be cool if there was a title for this, this view. So let me actually come down here, and I can actually say that the navigation title here is model.name. Or if it doesn't exist, we'll just call it listing. And when we click into one of these, hopefully we should see the title appear, and it'll pin to the navigation bar once we scroll up. So there you have it. This was a very, random need and desire for me to put out a new video. It's been a while. And this API I thought was really, really cool, since there's tons of data. And I don't know about you guys, but Airbnb is like one of the most aesthetically pleasing, beautiful apps, well crafted and designed on the App Store. And yeah, just playing with this API and putting together the other series that I'm working on has been a pleasure. So I wanted to come on here and build something in SwiftUI and hopefully help someone along the way. So that's all I've got for you guys today. If you enjoyed the video, drop a comment down below, as well as a like. Let me know if you have any questions. Always happy to help. Almost at 100,000 subscribers, so hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so yet for some reason. Let's connect on all the socials, Twitter, LinkedIn. I always love hearing from you guys. Thanks again for watching, especially if you've made it this far. I will see you guys in the next video.